Hello, 2322. Are you starting to track COVID through my hair? I wore a hat for you today. I wanted to go over John Milton's bio and Paradise Lost. John Milton was a pretty interesting cat, so you might want to Google him on your own. And he may have lived during the most interesting time in British history. And if you think about it, I don't know how the history books are going to be written for us, but we might be living through one of the most interesting times in American history. But I wanted to go over his bio first. My note said he was a poet, a man of letters, a politician. He was a free speech advocate, anti-censorship advocate. And he was married 3 times. Generally in 1600 in Great Britain, you didn't get married and divorced. So that might have been part of the reason he was a free speech advocate. Paradise Lost, the poem. Again, all these readings, I know they're in Middle English, but essentially Paradise Lost is based on the Bible. I know it's hard to read, but you're good Texans. If you know your Bible, then you know the basic story of Paradise Lost. To some degree, Milton, much like professional wrestling, which was my dissertation, he writes Paradise Lost from the perspective of the heel, the devil. So the whole Bible story, to make it like sexier, for lack of a better word, he tells the devil's version. So you know the Bible story, this is just the devil's version. So the Paradise Lost, epic, hero achieving a goal, King Arthur as a model. Back to his biography, he was fairly wealthy. He traveled a lot. It was a time of great political upheaval in Great Britain. I believe 1649, the king was executed. Milton was there and saw the king executed. So Parliament got together, like the government, our version of Congress and the Senate got together, overthrew the king, killed the king. And they were led by Oliver Cromwell. Milton was a follower of Cromwell. So he was very politically connected. A couple times, depending on politics, he had to go into hiding. But yeah, he was a pretty interesting guy. His life was interesting. His biography was interesting. Toward the end of his life, he was virtually blind, and that made him a lot more pessimistic in his later writings. A lot of his themes were be your own man, separation of church and state. And he was liberal and he was Protestant. He talked about religious tolerance. His critics called him Milton the Divorcer. So if I get to Paradise Lost, it's a 12-book epic poem in blank verse, biblical story of the fall of man. So basically, even if you couldn't read or write, most people in 1650 knew the story of the Bible. Maybe everyone knew the story of the Bible in Great Britain. So again, wrestling heels, baby faces. God is the baby face. Satan is the heel. And you could argue that heels have more fun. As I go down the list, the first arc deals with Satan and Adam and Eve. Satan is the most beautiful angel, but he's banished to hell. Hopefully you know the story of Adam and Eve, and we'll go over that. And the first part of the book we're reading is Satan's counsel. So Satan has been banished to hell. His followers go with him. And the first part of our reading is Satan in hell with his counsel. The second part, Satan goes to earth to establish the AC/DCN highway to hell. So he's building a highway to earth to bring humankind back to hell with him. Some of his followers, Moloch, Mammon, Beelzebub, and we'll go over them in a few minutes. Just general stuff about the Bible story in case you need a refresher. Adam and Eve have total freedom, but they can't eat from the tree of knowledge. Satan tricks Eve by flattering her. Adam is completely in love with Eve. He's more in love with his wife than he is in love with God, and he follows. Some character analysis. From my sheet, Satan was the most beautiful angel. The big quote from Paradise Lost is, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. So in hell, like, he's in charge. In heaven, he's a follower of God. He's arrogant, powerful, charismatic. He calls God a tyrant. He's a tragic hero with a tragic flaw. Maybe some of you will write your paper on Satan's tragic flaw. He has no morals or virtue. He needs followers because he's kind of vain. God doesn't need followers. He's jealous. He's envious. He's more noble than man, humankind, but not more noble than God. He has incestuous relationship with his daughter, and they have a baby called Death. And another theme you might want to consider, since I went over the part about Parliament killing the king, it suggested that God is kind of a king figure, and he has all the power. Parliament thinks England should be ruled as a group, almost like a democracy. So Parliament gets together and kills the king. And, it's up to you in your paper, like, who's fair, who's right and wrong. Character analysis. Adam is fairly stable, but he ultimately loves Eve more than he loves God. So he does what his wife wants. Eve was created from Adam's rib. She's not as strong physically or intellectually. Feminist, you can debate that. She's vain. Satan tricks her, and she corrupts Adam. The Son of God is subordinate to God. He defeats Satan and redeems humankind. He's more merciful than God in Milton's version, and Satan is jealous of him. God the Father is all-powerful. He's the creator, pure reason, pure intellect. Ultimately, Milton paints him as kind of stern and aloof. So maybe, like Bible scholars, you could say it's the Old Testament God, who punishes more than anything else, and he's kind of stern. Raphael is the archangel that visits Adam. Michael is the archangel who wounds Satan in the Bible. Satan's counsel, and we'll go over this more in a bit, but Beelzebub is Satan's second in command, is the speaker. He uses rhetoric. He thinks he can trick humankind to do Satan's bidding. That's how you get back at God. Belial is kind of a coward. He doesn't do anything. He kind of wants to hide in hell, not do anything. Maybe they can sneak back into heaven, but he's a coward. Mammon is greedy more than anything else. He thinks there might be a lot of riches in heaven. Let's just stay in heaven and count our money. And then Moloch is kind of the soldier, wants to go into battle with God and defeat God. Motifs, marriage. Adam and Eve should be equal. Who is dominant and who is submissive? If you're a feminist, you could potentially write about Adam and Eve. Idolatry. Milton kind of jabs the Catholic Church. Indulgences, what we talked about before. Like you talk to the Pope or you talk to a priest. A man is there as an emissary of God. And Milton doesn't necessarily like that. English Civil War, they kill the king. God in Paradise Lost could be viewed as the king. And Satan is part of God. Like maybe the bad part of God, the vain, the jealous part. Getting on to book 2, which you'll be reading. It starts, the first arc is Satan's counsel in hell. Satan is on the throne and he asks the angels for advice. Moloch is the warrior. He's like, let's go to heaven and defeat God. He's sort of a man of action. Let's go fight like a soldier. Belial, I said before, does nothing. He's a coward. He's scared to fight, wants to hide out in hell. If they just stay in hell, maybe nothing will happen to him. Mammon said hell isn't that bad. He's greedy. There's plenty of riches in hell. He just wants to count his money. And Beelzebub is Satan's spokesman, wants to get revenge by corrupting humankind. And he's good with words. The second part, Satan leaves hell and is confronted by Sin, his daughter. It's fairly dirty. I know it's Middle English, but Satan has sex with Sin, who's his daughter, and their baby is called Death. If you've ever seen the painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights, I kind of picture it like that. A lot of debauchery. But anyway, Satan is going to make a highway from hell to earth. So all the people on earth, all the Texans, can be led back to hell. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much the end of my notes. Again, I know the Middle English is difficult, but you know your Bible, Texas. So think of this as just the heels version, Satan's version of the Bible story. And you don't have to, but, my dissertation was on professional wrestling. It would impress me. I would like it if somewhere in the mix you did heaven and hell, God and the devil, babyface and heel, grand themes of professional wrestling in relation to John Milton. Okay, bye.